The Accidental Entrepreneur is brought to you with the help of our sponsor, AWeber, the world's leading small business email marketing and automation service provider. Since 1998, AWeber has helped more than 1 million small businesses and entrepreneurs through its suite of web-based email marketing, automation tools, and education. AWeber, the best option when it comes to marketing your business. The podcast is also brought to you by the Alternative Board. Since 1989, the Alternative Board, or TAB, has been one of the leading peer advisory and business coaching organizations for independent business owners and CEOs across the world. By facilitating peer advisory boards, private one-on-one coaching, and strategic planning services, TAB helps business owners improve their businesses in ways that change their lives. And be sure to connect with our affiliate sponsor, GSM Growth Agency. They're boosting e-commerce businesses to 6 and 7 figures in revenue and cover everything from ads and social media influencers to making your website better. GSM Growth Agency focuses on taking businesses from startup success to bigger success, going above and beyond to make sure growth sticks around. They're all about cool ideas, lasting partnerships, and making your mark in the e-commerce world. And be sure to support the podcast by ordering some logo merchandise from our online store. Listen to all of our sponsors' commercials later in this episode and follow their links in the show notes to learn more about their products and services.
I think the challenge with junk fees now, so everybody's like targeting on junk fees, and I know it's a little confusing because people think of junk fees and they hear credit card.
What would you say? What are junk fees? Explain that.
So junk fees are basically line items that there's a bunch of different versions of it, like drip pricing. So you go to checkout and then it's like, what about this? And you're like, well, I have to have that. Well, it's 25. And then I need a seat for my airplane. It's like, what do you mean I don't get a seat?
Right.
Now the seat's $25. And then they're like, and by the time you're done, you're like, it's $900. What just happened? That's drip pricing.
All right. Welcome to another episode of the podcast, The Accidental Entrepreneur. I'm Mitch Beinhacker, your host. If you are listening on your favorite audio directory, leave us a 5-star review. I don't know if you can do them on all of them, but wherever you can leave it, we appreciate the support. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like us, so we can keep connecting with people like we got Jeremy coming on today. So let's get on with today's show.
The information provided in these episodes is for entertainment purposes only. It is not a guarantee of success or to be construed as advice of any kind. You should always seek advice from local licensed professionals before making any decisions.
The dictionary defines an entrepreneur as a person who organizes and manages any enterprise, especially a business, usually with considerable initiative and risk. People often start a business without much choice, perhaps due to a job loss or just being dissatisfied at work, and they come up with an idea they just know can be successful. They become entrepreneurs by accident. That is to say, their success or failure happens by accident, not with intention. My name is Mitch Beinhacker. I'm a corporate attorney and a business advisor. You're listening to The Accidental Entrepreneur, my podcast about how to achieve success on purpose, not by accident. Join me along with our monthly guests, where we share our knowledge and help you get a hold of your business. And now on to today's episode.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Lessaris, founder and CEO of Payment Brokers, an 8-time serial entrepreneur, founder, and I've had 8 exits across totally different technology companies.
All right, Jeremy. So thanks for coming on the show. And I think we're all geared up, right? You said we're both a little under the weather. So I got my Stanley here, right? The whole thing, my little thing there. And you got your water.
I'm doing the same.
Yeah, you're also in Florida. But the weather here actually is 80 degrees. So a little warm.
That's not a bad day.
Yeah, for Memorial Day. Usually July, it's 100. So
it's almost a weekend.
Exactly. So we'll make it through. All right. I appreciate your patience with my, disclaimers and stuff. I'm an attorney, so I probably overdo it when it comes to that stuff. Yeah. So somebody said, do you really have to have that on? I go, probably not, but there's no rules, so I'm going to cover myself. Yeah,
probably a good idea.
All right. So why don't we start with the first half of the show, talking about your background and your training and the things you've done, because have been involved in a lot of companies, a lot of exits, a lot of things. And then we can get into it's payment brokers, right? What you're doing now, we can get into that in the second half. Does that make sense?
All right, that sounds great. So I am a serial entrepreneur, and it's such a great title for the show, because this wasn't by accident. This was
Good.
by design.
That's good to hear because everybody says, "Oh, I am the accidental entrepreneur." So
I'm not. I think I was groomed really early. My father was a serial entrepreneur. He had a detail shop in the middle of nowhere, just in the west suburbs.
that's funny.
Of
You know,
Chicago.
you're talking about car detailing, right? So in college, like my first real business was a detailing business that I ran out of my house. I was like, I don't know, 16. It was just when detailing was, because I went to college in like 85. So it was the early 80s. And my uncle had remember those Nissan 300ZXs? They had like T-tops, right?
Yeah.
He was an attorney.
Absolutely.
He is an attorney, very busy at his office building. He's like, listen, I want to get my car clean, but I can't do it. Can you come to the office and do it? So I didn't know. I got a buddy of mine. We get a tent. I know this is a little off the topic, but we get this tent, we get set up. So within, I don't know, a day or two, there's a line of cars of all these executives that worked in the building. They want their cars clean. They can't go to the. So I started this business. I had a distributor and the whole thing. And we realized that if we priced ourselves right, we would get mostly clean cars, not the really bad ones that were cheap. And yeah, I built it. I sold it before I went to college to another guy who I think drove a Porsche through the back wall of someone's garage and then fixed it. But yeah. So that was.
So
yeah,
that
but
was
your
my
dad had a
beginning,
shop, right? The cars would pull in and the whole thing.
Yeah. So it was a humble beginning. I mean, my mother and father were both like multi-level marketing.
The whole
they got
thing,
pulled
network,
into
yeah, the whole
everything.
thing.
You know, prepaid legal services. I grew up in a stroller at those conferences, right? Like it was, you know, Amway Global.
Yeah, that was the original
so
MLM.
I was indoctrinated. This is no joke. My family knows this. My first words were like buy low and sell high, because I had been, you know, carted through all of these journeys of like trying to build these things. And my father tried to build multiple companies. None of them were really ultra successful, but
it's a good education for
car
you.
Wash.
Yeah.
It was great. He had a car wash, and it was more than a humble beginning, because it wasn't just a car wash. We lived in the car wash.
There you go. In the building,
in a
the
car.
car.
Well, no, we slept in car. I mean, it was really humble beginning for me. But while I did it, he made it amazing. So, I mean, I think people accept the world in which they were presented. He was like, we're going camping. I'm like, we've been camping for a very long time. But he had a detail shop, and they did pinstriping,
thing,
and
right?
like they did some, So I got to see that, and I would clean cars, and he taught me how to make toilet paper flour, and then spray it with like Dracar.
Nice.
And spray it with Dracar, and the people would buy it, and it
little
was
details.
kind of a little thing like that. And I would sell them for a quarter to all the patrons that came in, right? And then it turned into, they had this commercial. It was like, buy these building blocks that you could make it like a jungle gym. And I was like, I could make a lemonade stand, because they had it was part of the commercial. I actually wrote an article about it. It's on my website, about the lemonade stand hustle. So my father was like, hey, look, I'm going to borrow you $50. We're going to go to Aldi. You're going to buy all the ingredients to make lemonade. You're going to break down how many cups you can make. We did all this stuff. I hand wrote out a menu. We had a Xerox machine.
So he taught you how to write your first business plan. There you go.
And I went across the street. There was a construction site, and I got them. Like, I sold the blues. I was like, come to my lemon, and everybody lined up.
Nice.
And it went from lemonade to pizza to hot dogs to, I ended up buying a pizza oven, and I had
like food truck.
A hot dog turner. Yeah, but it was on this like
a cart, like a makeshift cart.
Yeah, I mean, they're called Connects. Okay. They were like big building blocks, and I had built this fortress. I got shut down
because you didn't have any kind of permits.
Well, there was a hot dog stand across the street, and I ravaged that. Yeah, of course. So I learned my first business. I also learned regulatory and compliance really early, but also it was the bug. So from that point forward,
rich dad, poor dad, right? You're in.
I was sold on it. I bought an art. I took the money. I made $3,000 that summer, which
a lot of
back
money.
Then was a lot of money. And
how old were you at this
my
point?
Dad.
Oh, $3,000, like a lifetime of savings, as far as you're concerned.
Unbelievable. My father, he was upset with the whole health department thing, but whatever. So my next business venture was to buy an arcade game, because I thought all the kids would come and they would put quarters in it. Failed.
Really?
I was the only person that put quarters in it. No kids were coming to the
Okay, it
detail
was
shop.
in the shop.
It was
Yeah,
just,
some people are right.
yeah, it was a bad idea.
But
and
look,
my dad knew
it teaches,
He knew.
right? Location. You ever see a kid with a lemonade stand in their front yard and there's nobody drive down the street because it's like a one-way street or whatever? But you were in the great location for the lemonade stand.
I was tuned in then to solving problems really early. So everything had an angle, and I knew there was a way to fix a problem, solve a problem, sell something for greater than what you could buy it for wholesale. Like that terminology started really
spotting
early
opportunities
in my life.
like all the time. You just became tuned into that.
100%. And I watched the way that some of these like business opportunities would come into my parents, like then another like multi-level marketing thing would come in and crush him, like destroy them, like get them all ramped up, and then nothing would happen.
MLM industry gets a bad rap. There are some good multi-level marketing, network marketing companies, but you got to be real careful.
Of course.
With the stuff you get involved with.
Of course, I'm not saying any of them are bad.
Hype,
I think my early days
good.
were really seeing how, and we were struggling. I mean, we weren't living a great life. I was showering in sinks. Like it was really tough. So coming out of that, the bit flipped, and I was like, I can do all sorts of businesses. And I started setting up, every minute was another idea or concept that I was trying to get off the ground. And so that became my identity really early. And I went to school. I ended up dropping out of high school because it was in a not so great neighborhood. And so I ended up getting a full-time job right away and immediately side hustle. So while I had a full-time job, I moved out when I was 15, had my own apartment. I was working full-time and I was building something on the side, and I became this king of side hustle. Everybody was like, well, what business thing are you starting now? I was the same
way. My friends didn't want to see me half the time. They didn't want to hear about my next idea and what I was doing. But, you figure there's 24 hours in a day. You end up work. Well, you can go home and sit there and watch TV. That's not productive. You got all kinds of ideas running through your head.
I never did that. And I have, like, I actually have to, so my family and my business partners have stopped. They're like, put it in your notepad.
I did that too.
Stop it.
Writing it down.
It's actually therapeutic.
Because it calms your thoughts.
I write them all out. And I mean, if I scroll through this, there's some really great ideas in there, but just can't do them all. And I'm constantly looking at things like this. There's a solution, but remember that mentality of coming from absolutely nothing is a scarcity mentality, and it's a survivalist style mentality. So my early businesses were all about make money, profit, money, like didn't care about what, like, was it really value add? Was I solving a problem? Was there a mission? Like, my mission was not going to go.
Well, that was your problem you were solving, right? Get out of poverty, not be living in a car anymore. Maybe help your parents, get into it. I mean, get out of school, because why go to a school that's in a bad neighborhood? There's no reason. You don't learn anything usually when it's so much, bad things going on.
And then I got a leg up. I applied for this job. It was a really great job. And the CEO took a liking to me and took me under his wing. And that company went from like 20 employees to 20,000 engineers, from like about 30 million in revenue to 20 billion in revenue. It was an amazing career.
And you didn't even have a high school diploma at this point?
No. And so I started as like a web designer. I was actually like doing graphics and web, and I had pitched the CEO my company, and he's like, okay, you can help us with small things. And then it turned into come and work for me.
Impressed.
So I went to work for them, and I said, but I'm not leaving my businesses. And he said, no, I'll let you keep your businesses, but come work for me. And that turned in, I went from kind of lowest on the totem pole to I ended up being the global vice president of marketing and communications for the company, and had just an awesome ride, just so much fun, and worked with some of the most amazing people. But I never gave up my side hustles. And those side hustles turned into real companies with real revenue and significant profitability. And I ended up exiting a lot of those companies along the way for various reasons. It sounds glamorous.
Well, it always sounds glamorous. I'm telling the story.
I sacrificed everything, Mitch.
Every dollar went back in, every time, every minute.
I didn't have friendship. My friendships were gone. Like, you know, guys I grew up with that I went to school with, I saw them maybe once a year, if that. And I had lost all the camaraderie that you build
Right.
up kind of going to college together and all the other things. I sacrificed relationships. I did whatever I could to continue the growth and learn and adopt and build all these things. Not the best idea. Like, if it's one thing I could leave with the accidental
Right.
entrepreneurs, like, be cautious of what you're sacrificing, because you're going to end up trying to buy it all back, and it's really expensive
Right.
later on, especially like health.
Yeah.
Like,
Health.
I didn't
Yeah.
care. I was like, I am dedicated to being
Right.
successful, and I didn't know
You
what
know,
that
it's
word
funny.
meant.
There's a
Still,
balance between getting out of the world that you were in and, you know, finding new friends and leaving them behind and not letting people pull you down versus, you know, sacrificing your health. And then you're 55 years old and you got all kinds of issues because you just been working like a dog and you didn't do it like in a coordinated manner. So
yeah, that became, you know, and I'm paying for it today, right? Like, health is primary
Right.
focus, and it gets more expensive as
Yeah,
you get
tell me
older.
about it.
So
Yeah.
it takes a lot longer to
Right.
fix things. No, I think the cool thing was, if you looked at the cadence of companies, and there's absolutely no rhyme or reason to these businesses at all. None of them are related to each other. Like, one was an online furniture retailer. It was one of my first
Okay.
companies.
E-commerce then?
It
Okay.
was e-commerce before e-commerce really
Okay.
existed. And I had an apartment, and I rented a garage. You could rent stalled garages. And I found a wholesale furniture company, and I bought furniture and I put it on a website. Nobody was really there was no online furniture retail at the
Right.
time. And
So it wasn't
worked.
like you were
And
setting up a website, people were buying this stuff, then you were arranging for the manufacturer to send it to these. You were warehousing this shit.
no. Well, pseudo.
Okay.
The warehouse was local, so I could play the inventory game, but that bit me in the ass later with credit card processing issues, because I was getting
Like fraud.
chargebacks.
Yeah.
And even when I was delivering product, if somebody didn't like it, there were chargebacks, and it built up, and it hurt.
Yeah.
It hurt. And back then there wasn't, like, you know, all these online tools to like mitigate all this
Right.
risk. So I got hurt
slammed,
several times in
Yeah.
that business. But as you go through, you start to see, well, why did you get into credit card processing?
Right.
You know,
that
so
led
then
you
I
to
set
a
up
credit card
company.
processing business.
Yeah, so
That's
so
a
the
great
next
business.
e-commerce
It's
company,
recurring revenue, saleable, you know, the whole thing.
it
Yeah.
was awesome. That was a fun project. I started a company called Intelligent Merchant
Okay.
Service, which later became Payment Brokers. I sold my book of business. They didn't want the company or
Right,
the
no.
name or anything. I sold my book of business a couple of years ago, actually, and I retooled the company, because then I recognized another problem, which is that credit card processing pricing is kind of
And
up
it's
in
a
the
dirty
air,
business.
and
I have a buddy of mine who's in it, and he's like, it's a license to steal.
Well, then I hired a company to do some research, and it's a $50 billion a year problem. And that $50 billion a year problem is all small to medium sized companies, Fortune 50s, Fortune 500s, guys with sophisticated supply chain. Like, they don't have that problem. It's the small guy that takes the brunt
big
of
companies get
all
the
of
deals,
that
right?
burden.
Of course, because you don't know, and it's complicated, and you think you're being taken care of.
So I built a machine learning tool that can identify profitability. Why? Because I have proprietary data on how that works, and I was able to use that data to help companies negotiate, and just on a, I guess a split basis. If we were able to save someone money, we'd split the savings.
Like you do an audit. That's what Payment Brokers is. That's what Payment Brokers does now.
That's what we do today.
What were some of the other companies though you were involved with? I see that it led you to Payment Brokers, but
so while I had my career, I was involved and a co-founder of a company that built a device that goes on marine applications that control speed, GPS speed control for the marine industry. A company called. One of the guys was golfing with a world champion water skier, and he said, I want to make this an Olympic sport, but it would require the boat to drive itself, and it would have to maintain perfect speed and a bunch of other things. And he said, okay, well, we own a telematics company, and we're doing throttle control for, gen sets and hospitals. Why couldn't we do GPS throttle control? And then it was born, and we built the company, built a device, got it into the first OEMs, and now it's a global. I mean, it's in every marine application. It's unbelievable.
Well, what role did you play, though?
ride.
You're not an engineer, right? Did you even get
No, not
your
an
degree
engineer.
in high school or college? No. So you don't have that background. So what role
Hard
did you
knocks.
play in this soundingly sophisticated technology company?
Extremely
Yeah.
sophisticated technology. I was championing getting it
So
adopted,
all the marketing,
marketing and
business
communications of the product, getting the OEMs to pick it up, helping to design the entire interface, getting, I would call it back then, social media influence, but really finding others like, I know this is a weird one. Andy Mapple was a world champion water skier. There's a world champion jump skier. His name is actually Freddie Krueger, born before the movie. Yes, that's his actual name. Of course, he played on that significantly. Sure. Wakeboarders, I was getting them to adopt the technology and also using their likeness to promote the product. There wasn't really social media back then. I built the e-commerce app and rapid prototyped parts and was able to sell product before we actually had.
So you're really the business development guy. I mean, you're getting it known. Social media.
Yeah. I mean, and I got a following behind it enough to where the OEMs were very intrigued and ended up adopting it as an OEM product rather than selling it retail, which we also did, and we crushed it. It ended up getting picked up by every major wakeboard and water ski company, and then it went on to become something much bigger. That's just one. I mean, and that was something I was more of a co-founder in. Alternative healthcare, I was another e-commerce thing, but it was B2B, what I considered VMI. It was vendor managed inventory. Okay. So we would buy large quantities of supplements and vitamins and natural healthcare products, and we would split case packs to sell to retailers because they weren't going to take 200 or 500. So we were just doing VMI and drop shipping. That was extremely successful. And that was more an interest for me because I started getting into natural health, and I was like, hey, I want cost-effective products. So it was always something that I wanted to be involved in, that I could relate to, and that was solving a problem. There was no online wholesale group for that, so I built that.
Right, but because of your background exposure to MLMs and you're driving, you're really the missing link when it comes to, you're the business development guy. You get involved, you're interested in it, you're going to help with design and doing kind of stuff, but it's really leading to, how can I promote this? How can I develop business? Because that's usually the missing link. I mean, you can hire a technology guy, get a bunch of engineers, but if they can't sell their way out of a shoebox, you're in a lot of trouble. So that's really what you're doing, right? I mean, that's you. You're the guy.
Yeah.
Great.
And so the technology piece came in where I had already done e-com, and after e-commerce, it was, okay, could we build software? And we built an online reputation management company called iReview.com. And basically pulled in reviews for Yelp and TripAdvisor and Google and all the different sites into a single platform, and helped automate and build a platform around it for companies to manage their online reviews.
Which has become bigger and bigger and bigger now. Everybody's all worried about it.
And we sold that company, and a lot of these sales some of them were necessity. I just didn't have any more minutes left in my day to be a great operator. And I think I realized early on, I don't want to be an operator. There are really great operators. I'm a builder. Right. I like to build things.
When you say operator, you mean like the inside guy. You want to be the outside guy building it, promoting it, and selling it. Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah, I like the startup side. I like getting it to revenue. I'm a profit first builder. I like to sell things before I have them and have revenue to be able to afford to do things before I do them. So I've always had success in bootstrap founding all of my companies. I never had to raise capital for any of them. Not that I didn't, but I didn't ever have to. So it's a much better environment to be in, that you have a customer base, and then you're like, hey, I'd like to raise money now. It's like, well, yeah, it's easy now.
Especially if you don't need them, and then they really want you, right?
But remember, I said I started more in survivalist mentality, and as I started having exits, that kind of disappeared.
You didn't have the necessity of having to make another dollar.
my career
Sure.
just took off. And then all of my businesses that I was involved in
Right.
took off. And so the money just compiled on top of each other. And I was like, then I started making different decisions. Well, the first thing I recognized that left was I just didn't have the same amount of patience.
Yeah, well, that's what life does. It beats the shit out of you, right? And you can handle it when you're younger, but after a while, you're like, what the fuck?
I think money definitely
Right,
changes that as well. And so I started thinking more about what I wanted to do and how it impacted my lifestyle versus money and profitability. Yeah. So as you start to see more of the companies I'm involved in now, I'm building affordable housing. I'm trying to democratize real estate investment into those affordable housing projects. I'm getting cities involved in those. Why? Because now I'm looking back, I'm like,
right?
Wait a second. This is part of where I came from that I'm recognized I had a problem with when I was younger. Now I'm solving years later, hoping to potentially impact those communities. I built payment brokers specifically around helping small business. I helped a friend. I saved him thousands of dollars a month. And I went, I can do this for a lot of people. It's a very predatory business. And I know.
Is that how it started? He basically said, listen, I think I'm just paying too much for this. And you started looking at it and learning the systems. And
well, I did that when, it almost defuncted my first,
you mean because of it? You're talking about
dealing
the
with
furniture company.
Yeah. That's what I got into it right after that. I'm like, I'm in the wrong. You know how people say I'm in the wrong business?
You're in the wrong end of this transaction. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I figured out a way to be a part of the transaction. First, I was a referral partner for a company called Card Service International. And then that turned into me becoming a reseller and then an ISO and a bunch of other things.
I do some work for those guys. Yeah.
And in doing it, then I learned it's a game, and I didn't like the game. I exited that, and I was like, this isn't really what I want to be doing for a living. And now I reverse engineered it and said, these guys are all predatory. Like, I can help companies, smaller guys, I can't help the Fortune 50s or 500s, but I can help the small and medium sized company actually see a amazing impact to their bottom line.
One of their biggest
sometimes
costs.
1 or 2 or 3%.
It's like one of their biggest costs.
And we're using machine learning to scale that because it would be impossibility to do this by hand every day. And doing it in a way that doesn't have a cost out of pocket for the company. So these are businesses that were more aligned with my lifestyle, what I want to actually make impact on the business community and others. And I hope that they I actually said, I know this is probably not the greatest thing to say, to build your company, but I hope legislation shuts my company down because that they fixed this predatory, above the cost, above your, 2% cash back. That's fine. Like I'm actually an advocate that they're secure, that I can walk up and use my thumbprint or my face to pay for something. I love this seamless payment environment. It's great. And I feel secure. Like people are like, oh, your card gets stolen. I'm like, yeah, but it's actually not that big of a deal anymore. So I understand that there's a cost for that, but it's not 6%.
No, and in Europe, by the way, it's not like that either. Everybody taps.
In Canada, it's not like that.
I just met a guy recently. He's working in the UK on a system that's peer-to-peer, pennies a transaction. It doesn't involve all this payment processing. You go in with your whatever card, taps, takes from your money from your bank directly to the merchant, and you're done. And it doesn't need to be like that, but they have a stranglehold on our industry. Look at what is it? Capital One's trying to buy Discover because they have a payment system. They want the payment system. Yeah. They're not stupid.
It's to get an American Express. Same with American Express. Like they own their own payment.
They have control of your life.
Right? So it's tough because I also like the cash.
Yeah, of course, everybody does. Look, I have Amex Platinum, and I love the benefit. If I didn't get the benefits, half the time I'm like, we're going to dump this. I hate it. But we get a lot of benefits from we travel or whatever.
Yeah, so it's a double-edged sword there, but that's not the problem. So Dick Durbin and a bunch of other people are fighting Visa, MasterCard, American Express. They fought them for 20 years. They got 4 basis points.
Yeah,
4. And they're like, it's going to impact the industry billions of dollars. I'm like, 4 basis points. Visa, MasterCard immediately changed their pricing 4 basis. Like it's it's a bip. It's
Right.
like a blip on the radar of what they're actually charging, but that's not the problem. I actually have no problem with what they're charging. And I even think that there should be some markup above that because there is value added
Mhm.
service. But what's happened is that these processors have gotten in bed with all these software companies, you know, and I could rattle them off, but I won't because I don't know how legal. I'm not. I know you're not my counsel, so I can't.
Yeah. It's gotta
can't
be
get
published,
crazy.
so.
But I would just say it's become really embedded and predatory because then I've literally gotten emails from software companies saying we don't have to negotiate. We may actually raise the
Right.
pricing now,
Because they're too
and
big.
it's 5%, 6%. You know, and I've even seen nonprofits in faith and religion based organizations who are paying 6 and
Oh, that's
7%.
Yeah.
What?
And even
Like,
the pass-through
this
rules,
is
you can
it,
only pass through really 3%, right?
and the thing is, and that's
Yeah.
changing. So everything's going to change when the junk fee. I mean, so junk fees are now incorporating, and I just published this like 2 days ago on Payment
Okay.
Brokers. I wrote this long,
Give me
really
a link
long
to
form
the
article about
Yeah, let's
junk
put it in the
fees.
show notes.
It's unbelievable what's going to happen with junk fees are going to include surcharges. And you know, people are like, well, we do this cash discounting thing where people pay us cash instead of, okay, take all cash and tell me how
Right.
that goes.
That's not going to happen.
You want a Brinks
Right.
truck?
Well, not only that,
Do you know how expensive
people don't
that
want
is?
to pay cash all the time. I pay more at the gas station. I always have. I'm a business owner. I don't want to pay in cash. I don't get a tax deduction for my car,
No,
whatever.
It's tough because everybody's like, well, they'll just pay cash. I'm like, your insurance is going to go up. You're going to have security. You're definitely at risk, employee or even externally getting
Correct.
robbed. And then on top of all of that, try to move that money and deposit it. It's not free. People think, oh, if I have a bunch of cash, I just go to my bank and deposit it. That's not even free anymore, despite the fact that there's no people
reported
at a bank
Right.
anymore.
It gets reported. I've had guys want to buy business.
Yeah, and then you got a red flag. Yeah, you're a cash
I had a guy who was
business.
selling his business. He finds this buyer. The buyer said he told me he wants to pay, $150,000 of it in cash. I go, well, we could do that, but we have to have the closing at the bank. I have to have a bank official there. We got to have machines to count it, and it's going to get reported. The guy's like, I can't report this. I'm like, well, it's going to my trust account. It's getting reported. So he pulled that at a deal. He sold it to somebody else. Can't do anything with cash.
Go buy Bitcoin and do something else. So, I think the challenge with junk fees now, so everybody's like targeting on junk fees. And I know it's a little confusing because people think of junk fees and they hear credit card.
What would you say? What are junk fees? Explain that.
So junk fees are basically line items that there's a bunch of different versions of it, like drip pricing. So you go to checkout and then it's like, what about this? And you're like, well, I have to have that. Well, it's 25. And then I need to see. I think the challenge with junk fees now, so everybody's like targeting on junk fees. And I know it's a little confusing because people think of junk fees and they hear credit card.
What would you say? What are junk fees? Explain that.
So junk fees are basically line items that there's a bunch of different versions of it, like drip pricing. So you go to checkout and then it's like, what about this? And you're like, well, I have to have that. Well, it's 25. And then I need a seat for my airplane. It's like, what do you mean I don't get a seat?
Right.
Now the seat's $25. And then they're like, and by the time you're done, you're like, it's $900. What just happened? That's drip pricing. Junk fees are very much the same. They just tag on whatever. Like, you go in and it's like, well, this is for entertainment. There's a 10% entertainment fee. It's like, what? What's a 10% entertainment fee? And then now it's like, and 3% for credit card. And so if you want to hyperinflate the market, let's just pass this through.
And doesn't a significant portion of it go to the banks?
Yeah. So this is the
They're
problem.
making plenty of money. What do they need more?
No, this is where it's exacerbated the problem. So then they were like, wait a second. Hey, I got an idea, merchant. Why don't you just pass it through to the customer? We'll charge them directly. It was like, great. And companies did it. They signed up. Now they've gotten a black eye for it. There are a lot of people that will walk out of a company if they charge them credit card processing fees. I published it on the article. I actually have a bunch of data that we pulled from just Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. And it's like how many people had negative sentiment about companies who had surcharged. It's a lot. It's significant. So I think that's one piece of it. But what's going to happen, and it's already happened in California, and the country of California has already said you can't have any more junk fees, which means no more surcharging. I'm glad that companies surcharged for the credit card processing because it brought to light that this costs money. It's
Right.
not free. Now consumers really understand there is a cost. There's no way that credit card processing costs 3%. I'm sorry, if you're paying 3%, you should call us. There's no reason to pay 3%.
Huge profit.
A debit card cost, and this is published, Visa and MasterCard publish these. Interchange is the cost. That's what like Walmart and Amazon, all these companies are paying. They pay interchange because you have to, right? That's the network
Interchange
fee. That's what Visa,
basically
MasterCard charges.
Does the transaction, takes the money from you and moves it out. That's okay.
Correct. And there's risk and there's also, but debit cards have no risk, right? It comes out of a bank and it goes into a bank. And
right? That's why you can't surcharge a debit card if you're putting in a PIN, right? You're not allowed to do that.
Correct. 0.25%. That's what a debit card costs on average. I mean, there's more to it, but so if you're paying 3%, and companies have made it real easy, like this. Let me make that clear.
Simple. Not 2.5%, a quarter of a percent. Yeah,
that's right. So if you take a debit and you don't force the PIN, which a lot of companies should do anyway, but if you don't force the PIN,
just treat it as a credit
they'll
card.
just run it through as a Visa at 1.79 or 2.79. And if you're with a company like, Square, Stripe, or any of these other ones that are just, and by the way, I love that they simplified it. They're like one simple, low, flat rate. You're paying 2.5% more than you should be. Plus they add a transaction fee and
no. My platform adds 3%. I tell all my clients, you don't have to pay that way. I have Zelle. You can send a check. You can do it this way, that way. But this is what it is.
So here's the bigger problem. Some companies pass the 3% on, and then they pay 3% on that 3%.
Huh? So it's a circular problem?
You will think about it. Your revenue just went up.
But doesn't that not stop? It's 3% on 3% on 3%. When does it?
They take your total revenue. So a lot of people are like, hey, surcharge. Yeah, sure. We can add 3% to the bill. And then the credit card processor is like, this is a great idea. Tell every company that they don't have to pay credit card fees
right, of
anymore.
Course.
If they just add 3%.
It's a license deal.
That doesn't mean that they're not charging you a percentage. They're still charging you 3% of your total revenue. You just made 3% more. That's all.
So you're saying that.
So you're not even getting the 3% back that you've collected from your customer because you're paying 3% of that 3%. So it's a
that
really
that sounds like
practice.
Illegal.
There's no regulatory body over this stuff. And by the way, what I was saying before is Visa, MasterCard, all interchange, that's cost. What we're finding, and this is the study that I did internally, we used Nielsen data and some others that we've purchased and put together this concept that we think that there's $50 billion above profit.
Wasted.
So here's cost. And then you have profit margin, which I think a processor has the right to make a profit. But above that is $50 billion, and it's all on small and medium-sized
because
companies.
who's going to say anything? What are you going to do? You're going to sue them yourself? You're not going to do. They need like a class action lawsuit to be brought.
Now, if I showed you some of these case studies, and these are real. One of them is a close friend of mine. His brother came to me, and we found he does $150,000 a month in processing. He above profit, he was paying $6,100 more a month.
Extra that shouldn't be charged to him.
And we were able to help him negotiate $6,000 less a month without changing anything. And that's the most important part of what I was trying to accomplish. The devil you know is better than the devil you don't. They're all equally as predatory.
Right, because
all
it's just built into the
system. They
all
change pricing. It's built in. And look, Mitch, I understand why. Visa, MasterCard changes their pricing. They have to be able to change pricing at will. They have to. And cost changes, like if your cost basis changes, you have to be able to change. They just figured out early on they can just change it whenever they want, so they do. Not because their cost basis changes. They just, hey, I'm going to tack on 20 more basis points. And if you or I were just sitting and looking at a statement, no one's going to forensically go through
you don't really see it because it's just a little pinch. You don't feel
20 basis points isn't. Yeah, it's like, it's about and then what's happened, and I think everybody's adopted and kind of normalized, it's like 3%. That's like the cost of doing business. It's not. Right. If you're paying more than 2.1%, you need to take your total fees, divide it into the total revenue that you took in credit cards, convert that decimal into a percent.
You'll get a real percentage.
You get that's net effective rate. If you're paying more than 2.1%, you need to call us
Somebody.
you need to just at least go through the statement and figure out what's causing that problem. And there are a bunch of little things you can do, like don't get a paper statement. They charge you $19 a month. Call them and say, stop. That's a simple thing people can do. That's one thing. There's a ton of those DIY things that we help companies with. We don't make money doing. It's just advisory. I just feel like, come on, you want a paper statement, you can print it yourself.
Right. No. There's nothing.
If you're taking debit, you should have a PIN pad and force the PIN. There's little things like that, security wise. If you have level 2 data like tax ID numbers and others, and you can pass that through, you should. So some of it's optimization, some of it's advisory, but most of what we find is some sales guy somewhere is like making 300 basis points above interchange. That's wrong.
Because he gets a bigger commission? Is that the way?
Huge commissions. They're making 80% of that. So, like somebody was on one customer is making $4 or $5 grand a month doing nothing.
Yeah, no.
So we've been doing our best to try to help those folks get through understanding it, one, and two, it's all hands off for them. I hired some really talented people to do the vendor negotiation side, people that came from KPMG and other big advisory firms, because I said, look, you don't have a sophisticated supply chain. We'll be your partner there. Let us go help you negotiate this stuff down. We have proprietary data, and we use that data to negotiate. So it's data-driven negotiation. But again, the goal of it was, how do we cost all this stuff down? Even if you're going to pass it through, okay, pass it through, but at least have a lower fee. Like, at least save yourself some money on what you're paying. Because right now people are like, I don't have the time. I'm just going to pass it through. And it is hyperinflating, and the rules are all going to change really quickly. So the junk fee rule happened in California. It's happening all over. There are states you cannot surcharge in. There's a bunch of regulation around where you can and can't. They're going to regulate it nationally.
A hot button
and it's going to happen soon. So it's just going to be 3% knock to everybody. So people should be getting in line to try to reduce costs, but don't. What ends up happening is processor will call, hey, I can save a bunch of money, switch to our service, and then they do the same thing. I jokingly call it, they bip it up. It's like 1 basis point here, 3 cents there, $5, and they just slowly over, and no one's paying attention. And by December, they hit you with a bunch of yearly fees. You're too busy closing out your books for the year.
They seemingly saved you some money up front, so you made the switch, and then they kind of ate it back real slowly.
So this one's fun for me because this is one where I get to actually put money back in people's pockets. It costs, we don't charge them anything up front. We don't charge them anything on them. If we get nothing,
you make money if they become a customer of
nothing.
Yours. Right.
Yeah. And so it's fun. It uses tech. I get to have fun doing it. We're like Robin Hood.
Yeah. All right. Well, maybe we can do this. Let's take a little commercial break. I got some people that pay me some money, and then we can come back and talk about we'll get back into small business, about the things you've learned over these businesses, things you did right, things you did wrong, advice for small business owners listening out there, entrepreneurs, people you're in your position that you were way back, where they're bootstrapping and scrapping around and whatever. So if that makes sense, we'll take a commercial. We'll come back. Okay.
Sounds good.
Here's a word from our sponsors.
Looking to market and grow your business? Or perhaps you're just getting started and want to hit the ground running? AWeber is the best choice for online email marketing and automation of your business. From maintaining a subscriber list to drip campaigns and landing pages, AWeber gives you tools and integrations that make marketing easy and fun. As our partner and sponsor, we use all their tools to promote the podcast and market our law firm. AWeber, the best alternative for online marketing. For over 30 years, the Alternative Board, or TAB, has built a thriving community of forward-thinking CEOs and business owners who want to radically improve their companies. Through unique combinations of one-on-one business coaching, participation in monthly TAB board meetings with other non-competing owners, a suite of strategic tools, and customized strategic planning workshops, TAB membership can deliver greater strength to your business and a better work-life balance for you and your family. All packaged in a streamlined and affordable service that the people at TAB invite you to try risk-free. Are you struggling with managing advertising due to a lack of time or expertise? Perhaps you're facing challenges in scaling ads for your store. Are you feeling lost when strategies have no success? GSM Growth Agency is your reliable partner in overcoming these business challenges. Feel the impact of collaborating with a team dedicated not only to short-term goals, but also to building long-term partnerships and achieving sustained success. Embark on an exciting journey to redefine the possibilities of e-commerce and create a legacy of unparalleled excellence. Take decisive action now. Follow their link in the show notes to receive a complimentary audit of your Shopify store conducted by a GSM expert. Propel your e-commerce game to new heights with GSM Growth Agency.
Follow the link in the show notes to learn more about all of our sponsors. And now back to our show.
All right, Jeremy, we are back. You can hear me, right? Okay.
Yes, I can.
So maybe we can, first of all, I want to put a link in the show notes, of course, to the article that you wrote. I think most business owners, certainly that listen, probably accept credit cards and debit cards and all that kind of stuff. And it definitely is an education for the business owner who was, set up a payment process, I don't know, through his bank or somebody he knew, and he's just collecting money and it's easy and whatever. And he has no idea whether he's being taken advantage of or even the opportunity to lower your fees or whatever. So I think a link to that article would be helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. But maybe we can also get into some advice for business owners. You've obviously started a lot of businesses, run the businesses, been involved in business development, so I'd like to talk about, lessons learned, things you do differently.
Things
Right.
not to
Yeah,
do.
exactly.
Yeah. I don't know. I love startups. I love bootstrap founders. I mean, it's very different to grow a company when it's your money. It's a whole nother thing to go raise a bunch of capital and just
burn through someone else's money.
It's much easier to burn it. So I don't really necessarily have a single piece of advice other than the things that I've learned that have been successful for me. And I think this is what I was alluding to before. Going from that scarcity mentality, the focus on, just profit over everything and revenue over everything. Everything's really at least for me. So I'm speaking just from my own experience. When I changed the direction of what I was building for a purpose, everything got easy.
Yeah.
Like getting up to do it was exciting. Even if there was a hurdle, and there's always something, right? There's always some mess you have to deal with. But when you love it, when it's a mission, it's a very different animal. When you actually have a purpose bigger than the company,
just the next dollar,
people want to be a part of it. People want to be a part of it. Customers can definitely tell a difference. I think in general, that has changed everything, especially for this. It was an idea, and then it was extremely successful. And it was I hate saying overnight because it took me, 40 years to get
40 years
to
overnight
this point.
Success, right?
but then bang, it was like, wow, that's a business in a box. And now we're doing another similar development company on the lending side of the business, where we're starting to invest in affordable real estate projects to help with the housing crisis, and going into opportunity zones in different cities, and now working with an amazing company to help democratize investment into those affordable housing projects. So I'm super excited about that.
You're a partner in the deal? You're not doing the building yourself, or you guys are?
We're not doing, I'm a partner in the deal. But it's just such a different approach, and the people are amazing that are involved, and I just love it. So having that, people say don't follow your passion and don't take something you're passionate about and turn it into a business.
No, I don't agree with that. I just think some things shouldn't be a business, but if you're passionate, look, you got to love it on the hardest days, right? Because the hardest days will come. So, if you're okay, if you love it those days, because the other ones are easy.
Some people have the sickness like me. I'm an entrepreneur's entrepreneur.
Right.
I love
to
it.
See the next
I love all of the challenges. And so I don't have a problem with what kind of business it is, but now it's different because it's definitely mission driven and led. So I just feel very different about the whole thing. And it's been much more successful, much faster, with almost no pain.
Right. Well, you learned. So So
It
what
took
would
a
you
long
say?
time. And there's no
No, of
overnight
course not.
success. That is
No,
definitely
you become an overnight success after putting in 40 years of your life.
40 years.
What would
Yeah.
you say is your, in your mind, is your process? Like, okay, you think of an idea, right? What do you, it probably rattles around your head for a while thinking about it. And then what do? Do you start writing it in your journal and working through it? Or you start, what do you do? Set up a company again?
Well, my old process was
Yeah,
just
right. Of
go.
course.
Like
Didn't
I
write
didn't
anything
even,
down.
it didn't even let it
Yeah.
rattle around. I just started
Right.
building stuff and putting pieces together. And
Not the
I
best
will
strategy, but
say
you'll
that,
learn a crap load that way. Yeah.
yeah, don't do that, by the way. Don't
Right.
just go. You do need
Some
some planning, but I think people
Yeah,
over plan,
definitely.
and
The expression, you
can
can't
get
wait
into,
till all the lights are green to head towards town. It's just not possible. Right.
yeah. So going fast is important, but where I was successful and why any of my startups were successful is exactly what you said. I had sales before I had
Yeah.
product. I was marketing something that didn't exist in some cases to a point where people were hounding me down, or there was a list building campaign of some sort, so that when I did have product, I had sales and revenue day one, and I was to profit very quickly and very agile. And because it was my money, I wasn't like, let me go test all these
Right.
ideas. It was like, I was very cautious about spend. And still to this day, I'm like, do we really need that? It's like, yeah, you really need. I'm like, and now by the way, everything now is monthly, right? There's a month for everything, some subscription, which has made it much more difficult because you need like a subscription for the subscriptions.
nuts.
It's so,
Yeah,
it's
right.
maddening. But also I understand, like, everybody got the game.
Yeah, I mean, we all live on
I
cash
like
flow.
recurring revenue.
You got to love it, right? I mean,
So-
I got clients that are on retainers, and it's more cost effective for them. It's better for me. You can manage your cash flow that way.
It is.
Looking
It's
for the
great.
next
I mean,
sale,
and flat rate companies are the rage. Like, so, flat rate service providers, that's become, really popular. And so I think in general, that was my process before, was just go, like, start building and then build the plane after you jumped off the cliff on the way down. I was trying to assemble this
In
thing
the
and
midair.
hopefully we get some, yeah. So I don't do
Right.
that anymore. Now I'm a little bit more, planning centric. And my process today is, there's a lot of check boxes, and this is actually a business idea. You're welcome to steal it. I want to create a company called Idea Crushers, because I feel like, the one thing that helps entrepreneurs is to get crushed.
How does this
especially
not work?
before they
Right.
invest. I mean, and they'll say you're wrong, and I'm figured out, like, okay, go. But now you're going armed with what we told you was going to happen.
Put it in your mind.
And I'd love to have a panel, a legal expert, a financial expert, a marketing expert, and just you pitch us and we'll just crush you. And they do that. I mean, there's
of
all
course.
sorts of
I used to run an
incubating
entrepreneurs
companies.
academy for middle school and high school kids, and we would have a Saturday where every kid would come in with their idea. We had like 30 kids in the group, so we didn't have time to launch 30 businesses. It had to be tailored down to like 10 because we had a Shark Tank type of thing. Your business may not survive the next round, and it had to be constructive, right? Like pick on it.
I don't want to be
Well, you're an adult. These were kids. These were like 12-year-olds to high school, so we weren't trying to traumatize them. But
I don't know if I want that kind of PR.
Right. But by the end of the day, they learned. Okay, well, what they would bring up this idea, and the other kids would be like, "Well, what? That's not going to work because what about this, this, and this?" And they would say, "Oh," and they would work through ideas. And a lot of 2/3 of the kids didn't get through. They had to partner up after that with the better ideas. I think it's a great idea. It's a great concept. And there are people out there that do that.
That's I would love to have a panel. There's an old restaurant in Chicago. I don't even think it's there anymore, where they were like professionally rude to you. I think it was called Ed.
There's one in the city like that too, where they throw the food at you and they're like, yeah. Sammy's Romanian, I think, in the city it's called.
We need something like that for, startups.
Well, it's kind of like Shark Tank, right? I mean, you got to get into Shark Tank, but they'll crush you if they think it's a terrible idea. What are you kidding me? But
yeah, a mini Shark Tank would be good for people, because I think people don't spend enough time planning. And I'm not saying you want to get into this analysis paralysis state where you do
a lean canvas, one page. You could do,
Yeah. So my process has gotten this checklist now of Does it fit my lifestyle? Am I going to be able to do the things I do? What's the stress level that I anticipate? I mean,
right, because you don't have to start another business. So
you don't know what you don't know.
How does this impact my other businesses? Do I really want to do this?
Is this what I want to be known for? And I'm also very think from the end now, like what's the legacy that this thing leaves, and how does it travel on to the next, potential operator? I also think heavily upfront about exit now, where I didn't, think about what's the valuation of the thing I'm building. Can I exit it without
because you're looking to create value and do good things for people. Yeah.
I feel for entrepreneurs who are in this, I have to be involved and will never be able to unplug from it business. And what's the valuation? It's like
it's not worth anything.
Maybe you get 2x. And the professional services industries, especially like medical, and I see a lot of roll-ups in that space.
It's no different. Well, doctors, there's a roll-up there, right? Even accounting firm, but lawyers, we don't have really recurring revenue.
But when you get rolled up, that doesn't mean and this is the thing
it gets worse for the
struggling
doctors.
with. I kind of feel like it does, but I'm not an expert in it, so I don't know, the end result for them. But I feel like it's 100% of your effort, and it's almost impossible for you to get unplugged from. But I feel like even those companies could have potential recurring revenue models attached to them. If it's a dental practice, for example, why aren't they, here's your dental kit that you get every month. Here's your checkup kit that it's going to cost X, even though your insurance covers it. I have this extra whatever, and it's a monthly subscription. You have to do 1 year.
Yeah, smart guys are doing that.
So I feel like there's always another business inside these businesses that could be helpful. I know a lot of them go on tour and do speaking and other stuff,
consulting,
for
right?
Products, and so I love that. For me now, I look at, okay, if I build a property tech company, it's a 5 to 10x exit. If I build a fintech company, it's like a 10 to 20. What are you going to build?
Of course.
So there, of course, the barriers for fintech is bigger, and so there's just banks, a lot of they make all the money. A lot of these things come into play early on now in the decision making of, do I do it? Which is why the notepad exists, because I have a million things I want to do, but none of them meet the criteria. So I feel like I'm just going to have to dump that on the world somewhere and say,
I think there's like an incubator in there at some point, where you start an incubator and start bringing in people and teaching them and evaluating their ideas and holding your own Shark Tank.
And that's the last of it for me is it going to be fun? Am I going to enjoy it? Am I going to meet cool people and do things that I want to do? Not, I'm trying not to be trapped behind this computer forever. I mean, I love it, and it's been addicting, but it's also like, I kind of like to get out.
Yeah. Too, well, the awareness that you don't, look, you and I both know there are plenty of successful people that are trapped behind their computer. They are trapped in their office. They think they have to do it all themselves. And that trap prevents them from exiting the business, prevents them from having the lifestyle that they probably can have. They can't see it. At least you see it. And now you're making conscious choices. But a lot of people, how many businesses I get involved with where they want to sell and they're totally not equipped to do it. We're dealing with financials that you're trying to add things back. I call it magic math.
Oh man,
right? Create revenue that says, well, I got my 26 nephews on the books and we're paying for this. But if you take over the business, you don't have that. So then therefore you're making $1 million. Like, not really. No.
You mean the discretionary earnings calculator?
That's a good one. I like that. Exactly. So there really is profit here.
I've been buying my dog food.
Right.
It's like, okay. Yeah, no, and clean books and clean organization beginning. I think I in my early businesses, I just piecemealed. I worked off spreadsheets. I didn't have QuickBooks. It was like, cash in, cash out, no journal entry, no GL, no. That'll hurt later on, especially on exit. Now, if you saw a new company, when we set up a new company, the first folder is called data room.
Just start.
And they're like, what's that? And I'm like, this is getting organized day one.
That's when you do a deal. The deal room is just like that. That's exactly what you're doing. It's online. Yeah.
So my companies all have a deal room before the name is even picked. There's a folder set in in our virtual drives that are all set up, and I have all the folders structured because I've been through too many of these exits where it's like, well, go through the data room. It's already like we've kept every legal document.
Well, that's your process. There's a process for creation. There's a process for success. And people, the biggest problem, and I wrote a book recently, I just finished the Audible part of it yesterday. It's called 10 Ways to Get Sued by Anyone and Everyone, The Small Business Owner's Guide to Staying Out of Court. A lot of it is about putting things, I'll send you a copy. A lot of things are about putting things in writing, about having a not crazy business plan, contracts with your partners, things in writing with your customers, because you will forget, right? That's why you write down your ideas, because you got so much stuff going on in your head. Whatever you think the deal was that you made with me, I'll think it's one way, you'll think it's another way. It's probably somewhere in between, right? And it leads to problems and disputes and aggravation and heartache and all the issues that you need to. So if you do that from the beginning, exiting's good. You create value. I mean, why else are you doing it? You're doing it to work.
It's just I think people
I don't know that.
I think it's like, hey, look, let's have the problem and then I'll put it together. That is often the mentality, right? I'm too busy to set that up. It's like,
no,
you're going to be more busy. I mean, again, this is just planning for exit, right? And people don't do that up front. I'm a turnkey acquisition person because I know better than to think I'm going to operate a company. I don't want to be a CEO of 500 person company. I don't. I'm not interested. I want to build it. I'm happy to get it to revenue and profitability. And I know that there are great operators who would be able to take that and scale it and do amazing things with it and like to be the face of it. I kind of like doing this. And so it's actually funny because this whole podcasting thing for me was before we had our last exit was in December. A company called Designed.co was a graphic design technology platform that was a subscription as a, design subscription as a service type business. A lot of fun. Got to work with some amazing companies. And I love design. So it was like a passion project that was blown up. Design Co had lived in my companies or my group of companies forever, just quietly, because I was always spinning out a new idea. I needed new branding. I needed presentation material. I needed all this stuff. So I turned it into a business. It was good. I loved it. I enjoyed it. But I think, when you, especially on the exit side of things, this wasn't one I sat down and said, what's the exit on this? It's a service company. So it's, a lot of people, a lot of human capital. I'm not a great operator for those things. And so I found an amazing operator who took over and, acquired the company in December. And I think in general, that's the planning. Right. That, if I would have done that up front, it would have been a totally different, exit. And it wasn't even really an intentional exit. It was, I just know my place. So, I think when people have bigger value in it than you, it's an easy out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Jeremy, I can't thank you enough. You've shared your story. I mean, a lot of good value for people that are listening. We get on people that talk about their business and what they did but you've done, really from the beginning, learning everything in the streets, on the job, and that's, and you're probably one of the best salesmen that I know. So, because you learn how to get it done. It's the one thing that people are afraid of is how to develop business, how to sell this, how to promote this thing. And if that's what you're really good at, you'll be fine. Right. Because there's always something else to sell.
A lot of
big
problems.
Time. Cash flow.
Sales cures. If you have cash flow issue, sales cures a lot of problems. So it's a great skill set to have. Not everybody's got it. I mean,
and I understand that. So that's good. So recognize that, right? And find somebody who is good at it to promote whatever it is you're building. So
yeah, people are everything. I mean, all the companies, I mean, I would say that is the number one thing now for me. It's just surrounding yourself with great people that are good at all these. I mean, I can't be good at everything all the time. I mean, as an entrepreneur, you have to be a lot of, wear a million hats, but you'll start to find the right people. And then, this is why this is what I was alluding to anyway. Being able to go out and meet great people. That's what the podcasting tour is about. And now I'm like, let's just keep going. It's a lot of fun. You get to meet great people. I find all these new different angles of services and service providers that are out there, and, more and more, even better advisory that I just didn't have before. And you got to get out there to network.
All right. Well, we'll put all your links in the show notes. What's the best way for people to connect with you and see what's going on? I assume you have a LinkedIn profile.
Yep. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on there, actually. You can also find me on jeremylessaris.com, my personal website, but My newest venture is payment brokers. It's
Yep, and we'll
paymentbrokers.com.
put a link in the show notes. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining me. And let's stay in touch as the world of payment processing changes.
Sounds good. It was great to hang out today.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Accidental Entrepreneur. Opening and closing music written and performed by Howie Moskovich and made to order music. For information about Howie and his music services, please follow the link in our show notes. If you like the podcast, please tell others about us. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and most of the other podcast directories. If you like what you hear, please leave us a 5-star review and feel free to share our episodes on social media. If you have any questions or comments, ideas for the show, or you'd even like to appear as a guest, reach out to us by email at info@beinhackerlaw.com.
The Accidental Entrepreneur is hosted by Mitch Beinhacker and produced by Beinhacker Law. If you'd like to learn more about our business and legal services, you can find us on social media or visit our website at beinhackerlaw.com. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe to our feed to be notified of all future episodes.